Just to introduce the speaker, Glenn is one of the latest recruits to the Socialist Party, I'm pleased to say, and hope that his time as a member will be of great contribution to the organisation. Just one or two personal notes. We don't usually go in for personality things, but I'll say this nevertheless. Just to give you some sort of flavour and background of Glenn as the speaker tonight. He's been engaged in all sorts of expeditions and is an experienced mountaineer. It includes the world's first unsupported crossing of Spitsbergen and the first British crossing of Greenland, taking the route used by the great Norwegian explorer Nansen. He's also canoed the full length of Canada's longest river, the Mackenzie. He's a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society and a member of the Climbers Club and Arctic Club. Can I introduce Glenn Morris, who will speak on business growth in conflict with the environment. Glenn.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming out on this very hot day to hear this. And I gave this title in perhaps rather naively, but I did hear through the grapevine that there was a few sort of raised eyebrows, as if to say, well, you know, am I, by giving it this title, assuming that business growth is in fact a necessary requirement in society? But I hope that that myth will be put to rest very soon. I am, as David said, new to the party, and my knowledge of politics is very limited. And I know that I'm amongst people here that are considerably more eloquent than I am on the subject of socialism. So you'll have to forgive me if some of my arguments and thoughts to you may sound a little simplistic, but nevertheless they are based on my personal experience and my thoughts on our society that have moved over my years and come round to where I am now. As I'll tell you about, I actually do run a business myself, and the business employs 23 people, and as a result of running that business, it's become more and more apparent to me how it is absolutely impossible to run a business, if you like, or a group of workers in a manner that is commensurate with their good health, well-being, and indeed the well-being of the environment, and I'll come on to that later. I won't be too long talking because I don't want to be too tedious for you, but what I hope to do is show you a few pictures. This will, I think, I've chosen them carefully. I didn't really want this to be a great long slideshow or anything, so there are only a few images, but I hope each one will give you a clue as to some of the points I'm trying to make. One belief I have, and I'm sure that's shared by most people here, is that under the system we currently suffer under, let's put it that way, under capitalism, the destruction of the environment is actually a necessary byproduct. It's not as if it's something that's sort of an unfortunate byproduct. It is actually necessary, and the way capitalism operates requires the destruction of the environment, and indeed, dare I say it, human beings as well. And I think this hopefully will also become obvious to you. Most of you, I'm sure, know that. I'm sure also that those of you who listen to the news and read papers and so on and so forth will be familiar with some of the things that are obviously facing us. All the time these things are out there facing us. And to me, in my simplistic way, it always seems so obvious, and I can't understand why so many people aren't filling this room, so many people aren't fighting for the cause of socialism. I struggle with that one a lot. I'll come on to why I think that is later. And examples of the things that are obviously facing us, you probably heard of the company called Trafigura. This is a company that I had some information that I was going to print for you, which I can still do, and I'll probably send it to David. But it's a company that were trying to get rid of some nasty chemicals, basically. And what they ended up doing is taking, believe it or not, the cheapest option and dumping it on the coast of Africa, and thereby poisoning, effectively, African citizens on the coast of Africa. Typical example. My own experience of talking, travelling in the Arctic, I've talked to many, many scientists in the Arctic, and come across a lot of people in airports, in various situations, particularly through the Northwest Passage in the Arctic, and those of you that are familiar with geography will know that that was the route that goes across and through Canada's archipelago of islands. And it was originally a route that was, believe it or not, used for, with the view to trying to create a commercial conduit, as it were, without having to go south. So they were trying to get all the valuables from that part of the world through another way, because it was cheaper, of course. And in doing so, a lot of the explorers died in the cause. Nevertheless, I've spoken to scientists and people working in that area, and it is clear to me that there's an awful lot of mining going on in the Arctic. Huge amount of mining. There's diamonds, there's chemicals, and there's oil, of course. And I spoke to a lady in an airport. Is one lady whose her job is to cover all of this northern part of Canada, and that includes Nunavut and what used to be the Northwest Territories up there, Nunavut and Alaska and those areas. And what she does is she visits mines and she tells them when she's going. She turns up there and she inspects their processes and systems for disposing of the byproducts of their activities. Most of these byproducts are highly, highly toxic. And she says, some mines are okay, some mines are dreadful. And I said, well, tell me what happens? And basically, they sort of look out, as soon as she's gone, into the rivers this stuff goes, instead of being processed properly. It literally is thrown out onto the land. So there you've got a situation where to conduct their business in competition with the other mine down the road, as it were, they have to think of the cheapest means possible of disposing of their toxic chemicals. So clearly, the top priority there is not the environment and not people. Now, taken further, okay, the environment is extremely bad news, and in Fort Chipewyan, which is also in the northern part of Canada, where First Nation people live, they're a small voice on the world stage, these Inuit and First Nation people. And they don't have a lot of clout. There's not many of them. It's not like it's happening in the middle of London. And as a result of I believe this particular one is a result of a lot of the tar sands and things that are going on up there. You've probably heard of this. All sorts of carcinogens are being thrown into the rivers in those parts of the world because it's a much cheaper way of getting rid of the stuff and keeps it all competitive. As a result of that, the fish are becoming contaminated, and some of the First Nation people living in Fort Chip, as it's called, are dying of cancers. And there's an astonishing number of cancers in a very small community. There's a doctor there, a white doctor from southern Canada, who's trying to do something about it, and he's basically having the Canadian Health Authority on his back saying, you're out, you make too much fuss. This is the sort of thing that's going on all the time. And I won't expand on all these things, because frankly, anyone can look at the internet and pluck these things out wherever you look. And what worries me and upsets me so much is it's so obvious that we are putting, I say we, I use that word hesitantly, but society puts profit before the well-being of the environment. China is another one, we all know about that. And the moment China's rivers, that for thousands and thousands of years have been the source of food, somewhere for the communities to live and wash and so on and so forth, are running like toxins now. And that's the price for China's growth. The other thing that I heard on the news recently, although it was to be expected, of course, was this great saviour of the human food problem, GM crops.